Today we talk about the 2025 Detroit Tigers. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome in, welcome all, everybody. Happy Wednesday, the halfway point in the week here. So today we're going to do an episode. We talked about it yesterday that I have done every September since getting this gig, since joining this program. I've done an episode in an off day in September where we talk about the next year's team. And I know that kind of seems weird. And I'm not trying to get ahead of myself or get ahead of ourselves. I'm not trying to overreact to in the moment stuff. But I do think it is very important to have this conversation with 3-4 weeks left in the season. So we know what we're looking for the rest of this season, right? We know what holes we have to fill this offseason, right? And this is groundwork. These conversations are fluid. They change. My outlook has changed a lot on this team from like month to month at one point this year. Nonetheless, the start of the season to now, and it'll change again from now until like Thanksgiving or around the new year. And it'll change again from then until, from then till up until spring training, right? So this is obviously very fluid, but I do think it's always important while there's still games left in one season to identify what this team needs to see out of certain players in the remainder of that season so that we can be confident in said players going into 2025 or going into the following season. So something we do every year here. And how we're going to set it up this year is just going position by position almost. And talking about, again, identifying, okay, there's a long-term plan in place here. This isn't going to be a top priority. It doesn't matter really what happens the rest of 2024. This is the plan going into the 2025. And then we can also identify the opposite, right? Okay, well, someone really needs to step up and take this, job here in the last month of the season, or else we're going to go into the winter kind of anticipating or hoping for a free agent pickup or a trade or some acquisition to fill said role. So starting with the outfield, because I think it's the lowest stress conversation. This is one that is nearly set in stone. There's a little bit of flexibility we'll talk about, but I think that this is, as far as an overall positional group, outfield, infield, starting pitching, bullpen, the outfield is probably the most set in stone and will have the least amount of turnover from the end of this year to the start of next year. Obviously, you have Riley Greene not going anywhere. You have Kerry Carpenter not going anywhere. You have Matt Vierling, presumably outfield, also some third base. We'll talk about that when we get into the infield, but likely not going anywhere. And then you have Parker Meadows in center. It is so important for Parker Meadows to have this turnaround that he has had for so many reasons. One, just for the player. You root for the kid. Two, this season, right? His turnaround has almost been directly correlated to the improvement the team has seen on the field in 2024. But the biggest reason why Parker Meadows' turnaround has been so important for this organization is actually because of 2025 and beyond, right? If he came up and struggled still, we'd be going into the winter and I would be saying, well, we need a center fielder. And that would suck. That would really, really suck. Because Parker Meadows is such a good defender and whatnot, but if he was hitting under 100, it wouldn't have mattered, right? So now you check off one of those boxes. You have one fewer holes on this roster going into the winter and presumably going into 2025. And Parker Meadows, I think, I can speak for myself, not the entire fan base. I'm pretty confident in Parker Meadows in center field going into 2025. And that is all due to him and his turnaround sense being recalled and being taken off the injured list. Kerry Carpenter, this is where the a little bit of wiggle room and flexibility comes in with how the outfield's going to look like at the beginning of next season, right? Kerry Carpenter has struggled against lefties. His OPS is brutal. I know everybody wants to see him against lefties. I want to see him against lefties more, right? I think it's absurd that he gets like no opportunities against lefties. To be fair, his OPS against them is in the 400s. His OPS against righties is over 1,000, and that's why his season OPS is in the mid 900s rather. But his numbers against lefties are terrible. Now, again, that's in super limited opportunities, and I feel like he's not going to improve in said opportunities unless he gets more at-bats in said opportunities. So that is something that I desire, and that's something that I know a lot of the fan base kind of matches with me as well. But I don't think you can go into 2025 just assuming that he's going to hit lefties if there's more opportunities given to him, right? That is a really gutsy and bold assumption. On top of that, you have Matt Vierling, who has been about the same hitter from both sides of the, or not, he's only a righty, he's not a switch hitter, against both handedness on the mound. He's seen a little bit more power against righties and a little bit more contact against lefties. It's evened out to about the same value at the batter's box, no matter which handedness is on the mound. So those four guys, you could just roll into next season and go, that's my outfield. And I don't think anyone would be too shocked or too terribly upset. But I do think that there is a little bit of wiggle room for if you want to add a power righty bat that can play corner outfield and DH, I think that would be welcome. One, Matt Vierling is going to play some third base. Two, Kerry Carpenter is at best unproven against lefties. Even if you're in the, like he's not getting opportunities and that's why he, his numbers aren't good against them, that's fine. I'm not telling you you're wrong. Again, I want to see him too, but at best he's unproven against left-handed pitching. So I think that is something that isn't a need. It's not a necessity. I'm not going to go into the winter and go, this team better, right? I'm going to punch the table like Chip Kelly. Like I'm not going to, or Brian Kelly, I'm not going to go in to this offseason and demand it. However, I do think that if they added that, I could see the vision and I would understand it for sure. And then you also have to throw in other players that are going to be in that mix. Winfield Perez is a switch hitter that has played corner outfield and is absolutely going to be in that mix next season. And then obviously Justin Henry Malloy as well. Now Malloy has struggled defensively mightily. That's not a secret to anybody. And on top of that, has been next to unplayable against right-handed pitching. So that really pigeonholes his value going into 2025, right? Not a great defender, gonna DH him more times than not, and is really so far in his career only valuable against lefties. Now he's young and you're hoping that he can develop to be better against righties, but there's a difference between I think he could become this someday and he should get the fourth outfielder job on opening day in 6 months, right? So I think that Winfield Perez could make the team. He could be one of the fourth outfielders. They could expand his versatility and whatnot. That wouldn't shock me at all. But that's kind of where I stand with the outfield. I think that one's pretty close to set. Again, low stress conversation, but I do think that maybe a righty power bat that can play the corner wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Let's talk about the infield because that's where it gets, let me wrap up outfield really quick. The other two players on the 40-man roster that are outfielders are Akil Baddoo and Ryan Vilade. I am not going into 2025 under the assumption that either of those gentlemen will be on the Tigers 40-man roster. Okay, point closed. Let's move on to the infield. We will do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what is the winning formula for championships and also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, I think, be back tomorrow. If there is no episode tomorrow, I apologize. Got a lot of very busy evening. So we'll see if I can get home at a decent enough hour. It's going to be a late game anyway. I'm going to try my best. If not, worst case, we're back the following day. And after you make us your first day, make Locked On MLB your second listen with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, here to provide you his daily national expertise and trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs. Again, Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's talk about the infield a little bit here, okay? The catcher is a huge question mark to start off this conversation. Dylan Dingler and Jake Rogers. Is anybody oozing with confidence in that catching tandem going into opening day of 2025? I would venture to say most people aren't. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't work out and that if they do choose that, it's just going to be terrible. This is why we wanted Dylan Dingler up this year so that he could take his lumps, make his adjustments, and then improve next year, right? Everybody the Tigers have called up in seemingly the last 4 years has struggled off rip, struggled at the beginning, and then, some of them just have struggled and flamed out, but some of them have also then turned it around. So I think that it's important for him to be up here, still get ABs, make those adjustments so that if he is the 1B or 1A catcher of the future, he can make his adjustments and develop into that. So I'm not saying that's a lost cause or that I need a better catcher this winter necessarily, but I would be shocked if they didn't bring in anybody to play catcher. It's kind of similar if you're a Red Wings fan to like my opinion of the goalie situation. It's like, okay, I guess I'm fine if we roll in with the same goalies we had last season going into this season, but I also think it's impossible for them to not at least bring someone else in. They brought in Cam Talbot, cheap, older guy, not going to be, like a revolutionary type of player. I think we could see that out of the catcher. They're not going to carry 3 catchers, but we could see a depth catcher be in that conversation. Somebody that it doesn't have a problem going to Toledo, or Dingler starts in Toledo and then comes up in the middle of the year. Something similar to what Carson Kelly was for this team. So that's something that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. First base. Oh, first base. You wonderful, wonderful, beautiful position. Spencer Torkelson is obviously going to be the big talking point of first base. This is a huge question mark. This is maybe the biggest question mark we will discuss today, dare I say. There's a couple more pretty big ones, but there's an argument that Tork is the biggest question mark we talk about in this episode. I don't really care which side of the aisle you're on in regards to Tork right now, but I think objectively you need to go into 2025 with a legitimate plan B in case it doesn't work out. I think that he has been better since getting recalled, and that's great. He's made adjustments. We've talked about the swing adjustments that he's made on this show quite often. I still don't think that I'm going to go into 2025 just thinking, well, hand over the keys of first base to Tork, not even going to question it. He's going to be my first baseman for 162 games in 2025, guaranteed. If that's what ends up happening, obviously that's best case scenario. But I think you need a backup plan, whether that's somebody that can play corner outfield and first base, a la Mark Canha, right? And Mark Canha didn't really work out, right? After the month of April, he was pretty brutal at the plate. So somebody, hopefully, that's better than that. But you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You can get somebody that can help your right-handed outfield depth and maybe play first base, something along those lines. Obviously, most first basemen are lefties, but that could be something that you could address as well. So that's kind of my feelings toward first base. Second base is weird because there's so many names, right? First base is weird because there's kind of one, And we don't know if he's the one. And then second base is like, well, you presume Colt Keith, right? And Colt Keith has had a very interesting season, was really brutal offensively to start off the year, turned it around, has been really brutal again for the last week, but has turned it around on the season offensively. And then defensively, he's very athletic and he covers a lot of ground and he does have really good range numbers. But his numbers for defensive runs saved and actual glove work over at second base are absolutely brutal. I think he's a -11 DRS, even though he's a +2 OAA. So very different statistics there. People think that it's just the similar stuff. They're very different. And Colt Keith is kind of a perfect epitome as to why they're different. So there's been conversations about Colt Keith playing first base. There's been conversations about moving him back to third, which is what he came up as before the arm injury. And then obviously you have the conversation about keeping him at second. I do think he's improved defensively at second, but I also still think that there's enough question marks there to where if you're saying, I don't know, I hesitate to just pencil him in or pen him in rather as the second baseman next year, I would somewhat understand that. Other options, though, there's a ton. You're right. You have Andy Ibanez, you have Trey Sweeney, you have Jace Young, who's naturally a second baseman. Zach McKinstry might make it through another winter, right? That's a lot of names that you could throw into that mix, but none of them, I don't think, have the confidence of an everyday second baseman other than Colt Keith. So I am still under the assumption that he's going to be the second baseman going into next year, but the questions defensively make me at least understand if over these last 4 weeks and then going into the winter, we have some reservations about whether he is the second baseman in 2025. But, in early September of 2024, that's kind of the assumption that I'm going off of. Shortstop. Shortstop's probably going to be the most talked about position. We talked about first base, how that was kind of controversial. I think it's pretty safe to say shortstop's going to be the most talked about. Obviously, Javi Baez under contract next season, and then Trey Sweeney, who's gotten a cup of coffee so far this season. You also have Zach McKinstry, you have Ryan Kreidler, and then you have Eddie Leonard, who is running out of options very quickly, and also has not hit very well in Toledo this season, unfortunately. Also has dealt with a lot of injuries this year, and it could be a large reason as to why he struggled at the plate. Did a single name I just listed off give you a lot of confidence if I was to say that player is going to be the everyday shortstop going into 2025? I would bet no, right? Ryan Kreidler, I don't think makes it through the winter. Zach McKinstry maybe makes it through the winter, but isn't an everyday shortstop. Eddie Leonard, I just explained, has not played very well this year and has had a lot of injuries. Also, don't think he's a defensive shortstop at the major league level long term. Trey Sweeney hasn't hit well at all so far and also can't hit lefties, so he's not going to be an everyday, even if he does turn it around here in the last month. And then Javi is Javi. So this is something I'm going to put out into the world now, and then we will cover a lot more come the winter. You need to get a shortstop. And this is a regurgitation of a conversation that we had on this show going into the 2021 winter, right? When Javi Baez was a free agent, along with 4 other elite shortstops, and we walked out of it with Javi, which obviously has not gone very well. You need a shortstop. The production you have at shortstop this season is still astronomically bad. I don't even care. I do care. I am not coming on here and even saying you need to cut Javi. I'm not saying a buyout needs to happen or else I'm furious. I'm not saying he can't even be on the opening day roster next year if they're going to be cheap about it. I can live with that, but you cannot give you cannot tell me that he is going to start 162 games next year either, right? There's a middle ground there that is very obtainable. And I do think that a buyout is possible. I think that it's on the table this winter. I know a lot of the fan base really, really wants that. At a minimum, you have to give me somebody that you're going to throw out there against right-handed pitching and that can play good shortstop. And defensively, obviously, that is. And if that starts the beginning of the end of the Javi Baez experience, then that is something that is very much on the table. But at a bare minimum, you have to give me a shortstop. You have to. This is something I'm passionate about. You are not telling me going into 2025 that the names I just listed are still 6 months later, the only options available for shortstop in 2025. I will be very, very upset. That's a position that has to be addressed. And then third base, who knows? Who knows? Seriously. Third base is like, I don't, there's not a single name here. If you told me who's going to be the starting third baseman in 2025 for this team, I would tell you I don't know. I don't even know who the odds-on favorite would be. This has been a hole for this team ever since Candelario left, and it hasn't been filled by any one player. They've done the platoon thing. They thought it was going to be Nick Maton. That obviously didn't work. Again, they've platooned a ton over the last year and a half ever since the Maton experience ended. Matt Vierling, Jace Young, Andy Ibanez, Ryan Kreidler, Zach McKinstry, like those guys have all kind of Band-Aid, hodgepodge, put bubble gum on a leaky pipe their way to getting reasonable production from third base. But we need an everyday starter now. The time has come. We need to get serious about the position of third base. We need to find out who's going to play third base going forward. Matt Vierling can play third every once in a while. Again, I love Vierling in the super utility role. Jace Young has not hit well so far and has not played incredibly great defensive third base either, right? Now, again, we're having this conversation at the beginning of September. If he crushes it the last month of the season, then my tone will change come October when we have the conversation again about biggest team needs going into the offseason. But as it stands right now, he's far from a guarantee. Andy Ibanez, great weapon against lefties, not an everyday starting third baseman. Ryan Kreidler, no. Zach McKinstry, no. So, third base, huge hole on this team that needs to be addressed. There's several decent, intriguing third base options over there at third base rather, and shortstop, I guess, in free agency this winter. Let's talk about pitching, okay? We will do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the definition of clutch. They are America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps, in Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch all the winnings roll in. Look, they have a lot of cool specials over there as well. One Caleb Williams passing yard will give you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss on the deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And we just gave you the Caleb Williams ones basically for free. So go check out all the fun action. Football season is back. Prize Picks is in full swing this football season. So download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Also got to tell y'all about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets easier for your favorite live events. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's so clutch. If there's a ticket for it, odds are pretty good you can get a discount on it over at Prize Picks or over at Game Time rather. All-in pricing, again, it is awesome to see your total up front over at Game Time. You don't have to, get blasted with fees at the last second or hidden fees as you check out. You get your all-in total up front. They have the Game Time guarantee, and also you're protected with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, Game Time, Locked On MLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So let's talk pitching going into 2025. Starting pitching is a bleep show, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's just a lot of different possibilities here going into 2025. I think the only locks to be in the rotation on opening day in 2025, genuinely, there's 2. And I think it's Tarik Skubal and Reese Olson. Everybody else and varying percentages. They're not all in the same category of likelihood, but I think everybody else is kind of in the mix or on the fence a little bit, right? Kenta Maeda, very far from a guarantee to be in this rotation. Matt Manning, certainly not a guarantee. Kader Montero, not a guarantee. Casey Mize, probably likely, but definitely not a guarantee. Sawyer Gibson-Long, probably not going to start off the season on the opening day roster, but hopefully will be healthy and will be in that mix at some point next season. Brant Herter has been really good this season at the major league level and could be somebody that works himself into either a long relief or a starting pitching role. And then Ty Madden, same conversation as well. Not likely for either of those two, but certainly deserve to be talked about. And then the really fun one is obviously Jackson Jobe, who I think absolutely should, at least to an extent, be in the mix for an opening day look going into 2025. Now, I do think that we're going to find out their plan with Jobe this winter. Like, I don't think it'll be a surprise what happens to him going into spring training. I think we're going to be like, okay, well, we signed 2 starting pitchers and 2 are guaranteed, which means 1 is kind of on the block. Maybe it's going to be Mize on opening day, and then, Jobe will be one of the first call-ups here in the middle of the season. I think it's pretty much a guarantee, assuming his health, that he pitches at some point in 2025. It's not a guarantee that he's going into the season like on the opening day roster as a part of the plan, though. But for the first time in his professional career, for the first time since drafting the kid, it also isn't not a guarantee that he's on the opening day roster. Like, it's at least possible. And it may be only a 5 or 10% chance, but it's at least on the table, which it never has been before. So I think starting pitching, you have to go into this offseason and get more starting pitching. Now, that does not worry me. This front office has paired really well with Fetter, Lund, and Nieves, and which are our 3 pitching coaching staff, if you will. And they have done a fantastic job of getting the most out of starting pitchers that they have acquired. Michael Lorenzen, Jack Flaherty. Obviously, Kenta Maeda has not gone to plan. It's not an 100% success rate. Newsflash, nobody is. That's impossible. But they have done a better job than most at getting the most out of free agent starting pitchers. So whoever they bring on board, I am going to be at least somewhat confident that they're going to be able to provide innings and be a solid, productive starting pitcher for this team next year. But even if they don't go out and get 2 or 3 starting pitchers, I just listed off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 names, right? You have options, and that's something that you always need to have. I think that this is the deepest the starting rotation has been, certainly since I took over for this show 3.5 years ago now, but in honestly a very long time, like probably since the glory days, like probably since the last time this team was winning the American League Central. And that's a great, great, great quote unquote problem to have. We'll end with the bullpen. I think the locks are really just like Jason Foley and Tyler Holton. But I think that like Will Vest will have a good opportunity to be back next year. Alex Faedo will have a good opportunity, assuming his health. Bill Brisky will have a decent opportunity as well. You're losing Shelby Miller. He will not be back. I can almost promise you that. You're probably not losing Kenta Maeda. Probably not. But like, justifying a 1-year buyout is certainly a lot more reasonable than like the Javi conversation, which would be 3 or 4 years. So that's something to keep an eye out for sure. And then the other players that are in that conversation for bullpen, Alex Lang, Kader Montero, I think could be a really effective reliever. Lang when he gets healthy again, obviously. Maeda, as we've seen this year. Ty Madden and Brant Herter, guys we talked about on the starting pitching side of things as well. And there's a lot more names that you could throw out there for bullpen. This organization has developed some really solid pitching down in the minors. So I think really, I mean, when it comes to the bullpen, you look at the names I just listed off. We've talked about this a lot this year. None of those guys are high whiff rate type of players. You need a high leverage, go and can get a strikeout pitcher for this team going into 2025, at least one, if not multiple. That's something that this team just very blatantly does not have in its bullpen at the major league level. And so that is a really high priority for me going into this winter as well. And then obviously outside of Jobe, who we did talk about, there's not a ton of prospects that are really knocking on the door, right? At least like guys we haven't seen. Obviously, Jace Young, we have seen like how you leave, probably not on the opening day conversation. And like offensively, that's kind of it. Like Clark, McGonigal, Rayner, like our, Lorenzo, like all these guys are obviously not going to be knocking on the door of the majors going into next season. Pitching wise, again, there's a lot more of a conversation. Jaden Ham, probably not next year. Still, Owen Hall, obviously not. Troy Melton, maybe Troy Melton, but like that's made probably a mid-season thing, not an opening day thing. So I think that when it comes to, okay, like, can we fill any of those holes with prospects? Next year, probably not anybody we haven't seen yet, unless it's Jackson Joe. So the biggest areas of need that I have my eyes on right now with a month left and need to be proven wrong on is starting pitching, a high K rate, high leverage reliever, a shortstop, a third baseman, and some righties in general that can hit for power, I think, offensively. We have a lot of lefties. And if you can get some positional versatility and get some righties that can maybe play a couple different positions that have a little bit of pop in their bats, I think that would go a long way as well. So all in all, like there's a young core here that you can build around. I think that that's been proven this year. You're over 500 in September for the first time since who knows when, 8 years ago. But you are set to be, this is not saying they will be, this is with the money they have on the books right now, 26th in payroll going into 2025. Your 2025 payroll is in the bottom 5 in baseball. That's according to Sport Track. Great resource. The Chicago White Sox are currently on the books for more money in 2025 than the Detroit Tigers. So there's good news and bad news here, right? The good news is the list of players we expect to be back going into next season has gone up every September we've done this, which is fantastic. That's a testament to Scott Harris. I think that he has done for as many issues as I've had with him and for as many complaints as I've had. I also think he's done quite a bit right as well. And I think that that is a testament to him and the development of this organization. The list of long-term pieces is growing every September we do this exercise. The bad news is there's still, and good and bad is probably too black and white. And I'm not trying to say that like the world is ending because of this, because obviously we've been playing really good ball lately, but there's still a decent amount of holes and question marks going into this offseason. And we have yet to see guaranteed, like concrete evidence that holes you have going into the offseason will guaranteed be filled in the offseason under this administration. So there are holes going into next year, and there's things I want to see added. But I think so far this year, the youth has proved that if this front office does add pieces around what is in place right now, that 2025 could be an awfully fun and competitive year. And that's all we wanted out of this season. Play the Padres tonight, 9:40 start time, I believe, which is super West Coasty. And obviously you're playing in San Diego. Starting pitching matchups, it looks like it'll be Cater Montero against Yu Darvish on Wednesday night, and then Casey Mize against Martin Perez on Thursday. You're down 1-0 in the series. That means a series win is still possible. Let's go make some magic happen, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. Let me know all of your opinions about the 2025 season, who you think is guaranteed to be here next year. What really my biggest question is, what do you think this team needs to add going into the winter? And again, we will have this conversation so much more in depth and so much more often in the offseason. This is just an exercise we do every single September here, and I think it's important to do while games are still being played this year, because then you kind of know what to look for the rest of the way. All right? Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.